The first shot cracked through the dawn air like thunder. James Callahan didn't flinch. His weathered hands remained steady on his Winchester 66, eye pressed to the scope as he tracked the three riders below. They kicked up dust across the drought-parched valley, dragging something behind them. No, someone. A woman, bound and struggling. Callahan's finger tightened on the trigger. At 45, he'd seen enough death in the war between the states to last several lifetimes. 15 years had passed, but some instincts never fade. He exhaled slowly, aimed just above the lead rider's head, and fired. The warning shot sent dust spraying from a boulder yards ahead of the riders. They reined hard, horses rearing in protest. Words were exchanged. Panicked, angry. The woman was unceremoniously cut loose, tumbling to the ground as the men spurred their mounts eastward, abandoning their captive without a backward glance. Callahan watched until the riders disappeared over the ridge, before slinging his rifle and descending the rocky slope. The woman lay motionless where she'd fallen. As he approached, he noted her torn dress, the bruises flowering on her arms, and the unmistakable curve of her belly beneath the fabric. Pregnant. Christ almighty. "Ma'am," he called, keeping a respectful distance. "I mean you no harm." When she didn't respond, he knelt beside her. She was breathing, but a nasty gash above her temple had bled freely. Nearby lay an oilskin package she'd apparently clutched through her ordeal. Callahan checked her pulse, steady but weak, then gathered her in his arms, surprisingly light despite her condition. The oilskin package he tucked into his saddlebag. "Come on, lady," he murmured to his unconscious charge. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Callahan's ranch sprawled across 200 acres of the most stubborn land in the Dakota Territory. Not much to look at now, the drought had seen to that, but the sturdy two-story house and outbuildings spoke of better days. He carried the woman inside, laying her on his own bed before retrieving his medical supplies. The Army had taught him field medicine out of necessity. He cleaned her head wound with practiced efficiency, noting other injuries. Rope burns on her wrists, bruises in various stages of healing, some fresh, others yellowing with age. This wasn't her first encounter with violence. While dressing her wounds, he examined the oilskin package. Inside were cloth packets labeled in a woman's precise handwriting: drought-resistant corn, medicinal sunflower, desert wheat, seeds, each meticulously cataloged with planting instructions. The woman stirred as he was returning the packets to their wrapping. Her eyes flashed open, hazel, intelligent, and immediately terrified. She scrambled backward against the headboard, hand protectively covering her belly. "Easy," Callahan raised his palms. "You're safe. I'm the one who fired that warning shot. Name's James Callahan. This is my ranch." Her gaze darted around the room, assessing escape routes, threats. Finally, it settled on the oilskin package. "My seeds," she whispered, voice hoarse. "They're safe," he assured her, passing her the package. She clutched it to her chest, some tension leaving her shoulders. "Thank you," she swallowed hard. "I'm Emma Sullivan. Those men, they after you or what you're carrying?" "Both." Her expression hardened. "My husband sent them. Victor Hayes." The name landed like a physical blow. Callahan struggled to keep his face neutral, but something must have shown. "You know him," she said, not a question. "Hayes owns the bank in Prosperity." Callahan's voice remained level despite the fury building in his chest. "Been buying up land all through the territory, foreclosing on folks who can't make their payments during this drought. That's just business to him." Emma's bitter laugh held no humor. "Everything has a price. Land, livestock, even wives." Her hand unconsciously touched her bruised cheek. "He sold me for $1 silver when he decided I was barren." "Sold you? To whom?" "His business partner. I escaped during the exchange." Her eyes met his, challenging. "I'd rather die than be treated as property." Callahan nodded, respect kindling. You said your name was Sullivan, not Hayes. I've reclaimed my family name. She stared into the distance. 7 years ago, I was thrown from a horse. The doctors said the internal damage meant I could never conceive. Her hand moved to her swollen belly. My mother was the only one who didn't believe them. She said the body finds ways to heal given time. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was. Catherine Sullivan, one of the few female botanists recognized by Eastern universities. Pride colored Emma's voice. She spent her life developing plants that could withstand harsh conditions, worked alongside Lakota women, learning their traditional knowledge about drought-resistant crops. These seeds were her life's work. Understanding dawned on Callahan's face. Seeds that could save every farm in the territory during times like these. Seeds that could make a man like Victor Hayes even wealthier if he controlled them, Emma corrected. He'd sell them at impossible prices, drive more farmers into bankruptcy, take their land. Callahan stood, moved to the window, surveying his parched fields. Once lush pastures now lay brown and cracked under the relentless sun. 3 neighboring ranches had already gone under, their owners selling to Hayes for pennies on the dollar. Those men will return, he said finally, with more guns. I should leave. I've brought danger to your door. Miss Sullivan, I'm the last rancher in this valley who hasn't bowed to Hayes. My land is the only thing standing between him and complete control of the water rights. Callahan turned, decision made. Stay, at least until you're stronger. We've got a common enemy, it seems. The weeks that followed fell into an uneasy rhythm. Each dawn, Callahan would check the perimeter of his property before tending to the remaining cattle. Emma, growing stronger daily, took over household duties despite his protests that she should rest in her condition. During the long evenings, they exchanged pieces of their past like trading cards, carefully at first, then with growing openness. Emma spoke of her mother's research, her own education in botany cut short by her father's death and subsequent marriage to Hayes. Callahan shared battlefield stories he'd never voiced aloud, not the glory or horror, but the small moments of humanity glimpsed between the carnage. Your mother, Callahan asked one night as they sat on the porch, watching heat lightning flicker across the distant horizon. What happened to her? Fever took her 3 years ago. Emma's fingers traced the edge of her shawl. That's when everything changed. My father couldn't manage the farm alone. Started drinking. Hayes appeared like salvation. Wealthy, respected, offering to help. He saw an opportunity. Emma nodded. Our land had the best water access in the county. Valuable, especially with the droughts getting worse every year. She gave a bitter smile. His own mother, Martha, tried to warn me. Said her son saw people as assets, nothing more. But I was young, desperate to save what remained of our family legacy. Martha Hayes? Callahan's interest sharpened. I met her once during my investigation. Seemed cut from different cloth than her son. Emma turned to him, surprised. Investigation? Callahan held her gaze for a long moment before rising. There's something you should know. He disappeared into the house, returning with a wooden box. From it, he withdrew a tarnished U.S. Marshal's badge. 4 years I wore this, assigned to investigate land fraud in the territory. His face darkened. Hayes was my primary target. He'd been using the drought to manipulate water rights, driving farmers to bankruptcy, then buying their land cheap. That's why you recognized his name. His schemes drove 3 families to ruin. One man, Thomas Miller, took his own life. He was a friend. Fought alongside me at Gettysburg. Callahan's jaw tightened. I gathered evidence, presented it to the territorial judge, but Hayes had friends in high places. The charges were dismissed. What happened to you? Politics happened. I was forced to resign. Dishonorably. His laugh was harsh. They made sure I couldn't testify against him ever again. So you bought this ranch. To keep fighting. This land controls access to the upper watershed. As long as I hold it, Hayes can't dam the creek that feeds the Southern Valley. He met her gaze directly. We all have secrets, Miss Sullivan. Dawn broke over Callahan's ranch, painting the weathered buildings gold. Emma stood on the porch, watching him repair the corral fence, his movements efficient despite the heat. Nearly 3 weeks had passed since her arrival. Her strength had returned quickly, her body resilient despite her condition. You handle that hammer like you've been doing it all your life, she observed, offering him water from the dipper. He drank deeply before answering. Wasn't always a rancher. After the war, took me years to settle. Which side? Union, sharpshooter. He drove another nail with unnecessary force. Not something I'm proud of, but the skills don't leave you. Emma nodded toward the distant hills. Think they'll come today? Eventually. Hayes isn't one to let things go. He studied her face. That old greenhouse behind the barn, is it something you could use? For the seeds? Her expression brightened. You'd let me plant them. Seems a shame to keep them hidden away when they could be helping. He gestured at the parched landscape. This is the worst drought in 50 years. People are losing everything. That afternoon, they cleared the abandoned greenhouse, replacing broken glass and preparing soil beds. As they worked, Emma explained each seed variety, her knowledge impressive and detailed. These sunflowers, she said, holding up a packet, aren't just drought-resistant. Their seeds contain compounds that reduce fever and inflammation. She demonstrated how to extract the medicinal sap, carefully collecting a drop on her finger. Mother discovered that when burned, this creates a thick smoke the Lakota use for signaling across long distances. Useful knowledge, Callahan observed, watching her work with growing admiration. Mother always said knowledge kept in books helps few, but knowledge shared helps many. Emma carefully planted the first seeds in prepared soil. I've been experimenting with concentrating the extracts. Some have surprising properties. Later, she showed him a small vial of clear liquid distilled from seedlings she'd started upon arriving. This one helps prevent infection. I've been using it on my own cuts. See how they're healing cleanly? That evening, as sunset painted the western sky crimson, their conversation lingered over dinner. Something had shifted between them, comfort replacing caution, trust supplanting suspicion. When their hands accidentally touched while clearing dishes, neither pulled away immediately. The first gunshot shattered their fragile peace just before dawn. 3 riders, better armed than before, approached from the east where the sun would blind defenders. But Callahan wasn't caught unaware. He'd positioned himself on the roof of the barn, rifle ready. Stay inside, he'd ordered Emma, pressing a revolver into her hands. Last resort only. The first shot dropped a rider from his saddle. The others scattered, taking cover behind boulders. For 20 minutes, bullets flew, the attackers firing wildly, Callahan responding with the methodical precision of a trained marksman. When smoke began rising from the storage shed, Callahan realized their strategy. They were creating a diversion. He shifted position, scanning for movement, when a bullet splintered the wood inches from his head. Returning fire, he caught a glimpse of his target falling. The surviving attacker retreated, dragging his wounded companion. Callahan descended quickly to battle the spreading flames. Emma was already there, filling buckets from the well. Together they fought the fire, saving most of the building, though one section was charred beyond repair. They'll be back, Callahan said grimly, surveying the damage, with more men. That evening, as they cleaned their smoke-stained hands and faces, a wagon approached. Callahan grabbed his rifle, but Emma stilled his arm. I know that driver, she said, squinting at the approaching figure. It's Martha, Victor's mother. The elderly woman who stepped down from the wagon moved with dignity despite her years. Her stern face was lined with worry as she approached the porch where they waited. I came to warn you, she said without preamble. Victor has gathered men. They'll attack at dawn, 12 hired guns with orders to burn you out and retrieve both Emma and the seeds. Her gaze lingered on Emma's pregnant form. In the child, of course. Why are you helping us? Callahan asked, suspicious. Because my son has become someone I don't recognize. The seeds, the land, it's obsession now, not business. Martha's gaze found Emma's. I should have done more when you were in my house. Seen the bruises, asked the questions. There's more, Emma prompted, sensing the older woman's hesitation. Martha nodded slowly. Victor can't father children. War injuries. He knows the child isn't his, yet he claims it as his bloodline, his legacy. Her eyes met Emma's. He'll never stop hunting you both. After Martha departed, Callahan sent a hastily scrawled message with a trusted ranch hand to his former marshal colleague in Fort Pierre. William Carpenter owes me his life twice over, he explained. If anyone will come, it's him. But it would take 2 days minimum. We don't have 2 days, Emma reminded him. In the greenhouse, illuminated by lantern light, Emma examined her sprouting seedlings. Despite everything, life persisted, pushing green shoots through dark soil. An idea formed. These medicinal sunflowers, she explained, Mother discovered they produce a sap that when burned creates dense smoke. The Lakota used it for signaling and to confuse enemies during battle. She looked up at Callahan. We might not have numbers, but we have advantages they won't expect. Dawn broke blood red across the eastern horizon. Callahan positioned himself on the roof, rifle ready, extra ammunition belts crossed over his chest. Below, Emma waited in the main house, pistol in one hand, a collection of glass vials in the other, extracts from her seedlings, prepared through the night. They came as Martha had warned, 12 riders emerging from the morning mist. Victor Hayes at their center. Unlike his hired guns, Hayes rode unconcerned, as if arriving for a social call rather than a raid. Callahan, he called, voice carrying across the yard. I've come for what's mine. Send out the woman and the seeds, and you can keep your worthless land. Callahan's response was a single shot that knocked the hat from Hayes's head. The banker recoiled, then laughed. Still the marksman, I see. You could have killed me, but didn't. Weakness, Callahan. Always your downfall. The battle erupted with fury. Hired guns spread out, approaching from multiple directions. Callahan picked his shots carefully, dropping 2 men before they forced him to retreat as portions of the roof caught fire from flaming arrows. Inside the house, Emma watched the flames spread with calculated calm. When the first attacker kicked in the back door, she threw a vial. Glass shattered, releasing thick, choking smoke that filled the kitchen. Confused shouts echoed as men stumbled blindly, firing at shadows. Callahan reached Emma through a hidden cellar entrance they'd prepared. South side's clear. Greenhouse tunnel's our best chance. They moved together through the smoke-filled house, ducking low. Outside, the battle continued. Hired guns firing at the upper windows where they believed Callahan remained. The diversion worked until they reached the greenhouse. Victor Hayes stood waiting, revolver leveled at Emma's chest. Predictable, he sneered. You always did love these plants more than anything, Emma. Not plants, she corrected, straightening despite the gun. Life. Something you've never valued. I value property, Hayes countered. Land, resources, assets, things with actual worth. His gaze shifted to her belly. Even bastard children have uses when properly managed. Like me? Came a new voice. Martha Hayes emerged from between rows of seedlings. Another asset to be managed? Hayes's confidence faltered. Mother, what are you witnessing? She said firmly. As I should have done years ago, when you forged documents, when you bribed judges, when you abused your wife. You understand nothing about business, Hayes spat. Father knew that. Why he left everything to me instead of... A floorboard creaked. Hayes spun, firing blindly toward the sound. Callahan emerged from the shadows. blood spreading across his shirt from a bullet wound in his shoulder. Despite the injury, his aim remained steady as he raised his gun. The standoff stretched, 3 generations caught in a moment of reckoning. "You're finished, Hayes," Callahan said quietly. "I sent evidence to Federal Marshal Carpenter yesterday. Your political friends can't protect you anymore." Hayes's face contorted. "I still have time to destroy everything you've built." He turned his gun toward the seedlings. "Starting with these precious plants." Emma moved before anyone could react, throwing her last vial. As smoke billowed, a gunshot echoed. Then another. Bodies collided in the chaos. When the smoke cleared, Hayes lay on the greenhouse floor, a neat hole through his chest. Emma stood over him, Callahan's revolver still smoking in her hand. The look in her eyes wasn't regret, but resolution. The culmination of years of abuse and fear transformed into final, decisive action. Martha knelt beside her son, checking for life and finding none. She closed his eyes with trembling fingers. "I failed him," she whispered. "Long before today." Callahan stumbled, blood loss taking its toll. Emma caught him, lowering him gently to the ground. From her apron pocket, she produced another vial, this one containing clear liquid. "Medicinal extract," she explained, applying it to his wound. "It will slow the bleeding until help arrives." 6 months passed. Winter yielded to a spring unlike any the valley had seen in years. Rain fell in gentle, sustained patterns. Creeks flowed where dust had rained, and across the region, farms displayed patches of green, test plots of drought-resistant crops distributed by the Sullivan Callahan Seed Company. On the porch of the rebuilt ranch house, James Callahan rocked gently, cradling a newborn boy while Emma tended nearby garden beds. His left arm, still stiff from the wound, had healed well enough for most tasks. The federal marshals who'd eventually arrived had cleared his name, restoring his reputation if not his badge. Hayes's empire had crumbled under investigation. Martha had testified against her son's associates, then used her portion of the recovered assets to establish a fund for farmers ruined by her family's schemes. Redemption came in many forms. "He has your eyes," Callahan observed as the infant gripped his finger with surprising strength. Emma smiled, brushing soil from her hands. "And your stubbornness." "I think." They hadn't discussed the child's biological origins. It didn't matter. Like the seedlings spreading across the valley, this new life represented possibility, the human capacity to flourish even in harsh conditions, given proper care and protection. From the hilltop, they could see for miles. Where brown desolation had dominated, patches of green now emerged, tentative but persistent. The drought wasn't over, but for the first time in years, the land had a fighting chance. "We should distribute the winter wheat next," Emma said, returning to the porch. "Farmers will need to plant by late summer to harvest before frost." Callahan nodded, passing her the baby. He reached into his pocket, producing a small object that caught the sunlight. A U.S. Marshal's badge, newly polished. "Got this in today's mail," he explained, along with a request to serve as agricultural enforcement officer for the territory. "Seems Washington's taken interest in seed patent fraud." Emma's eyes widened. "You're considering it. Might be useful. Official authority to protect what we're building." His weathered hand covered hers. "What do you think, Mrs. Callahan? Ready to take on another battle?" The simple gold band on her finger caught the sunlight as she squeezed his hand. They had made their vows 3 months prior, witnessed by Martha and the federal marshals who'd become unexpected allies. "Always," she replied, the word both promise and prayer. Below them, the valley stretched toward the horizon, scarred but healing, transformed by courage, justice, and seeds of hope planted in even the most barren ground. Like the land itself, they had weathered the worst and emerged stronger, their roots intertwined against whatever storms might come.